Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
The war began with a smile. Not a kind one, but the sort of smile a queen gives just before she signs an execution order. It was a curve of pale lips and a carefully powdered face, and it was aimed directly at me. I'm not cornered anymore, I had just told her, my voice still shaking from the fragile victory of my meeting with Clara. I stood on the bottom step of the grand staircase, a girl in a pleated skirt and kitten heels, feeling the unfamiliar strength of a spine I was only just discovering. My stepmother, Eleanor, merely laughed. It was not a sound of mirth, but of fine crystal shattering on a marble floor. "You think this is over?" she purred, gliding towards me. The scent of her perfume, a sharp white floral, was a warning. Darling, this was just the beginning. A cold dread, slick and familiar, coiled in my gut. "What do you mean?" She stopped, her shadow falling over me. "I made a few calls. Sent a few things to the right people." Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, held mine. "If you think your secret is safe now, you're beautifully mistaken." "What did you do?" The words were a whisper. Let's just say, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush, that Jessica might be seeing her name on a few official documents. I staggered back, one hand flying to my chest, feeling the soft padding of the bra beneath my silk blouse. "You didn't." "Oh, I did," she confirmed, the smile returning, wider this time. "And you'll see precisely what I mean when the mail arrives tomorrow." She turned and disappeared into the kitchen, humming a cheerful, tuneless melody. I was left alone in the cavernous foyer, a statue carved from fear. My name is Leo. I'm 19. And Jessica, the girl my stepmother had created as a punishment, was about to become a prisoner in her own skin. It had all started a week ago, a lifetime ago, with the click of a lock and the creak of a floorboard. The house was a tomb when Eleanor was out. A beautiful, sterile, sun-drenched tomb filled with the ghost of my father and the oppressive weight of her rules. Her Pilates class was my 90-minute window of freedom. The ritual was always the same. Curtains drawn. Door locked. A breathless moment of silence, listening for the phantom sound of her car in the driveway. Then, on my knees, my fingers finding the slight groove in the hardwood floor beneath my bed. The board lifted with a soft groan, revealing my sanctuary. It wasn't much. A wisteria silk blouse with pearl buttons. A simple A-line skirt the color of a summer sky. Dusty rose ballet flats. 2 bras I'd bought with cash from a department store 2 towns over, my heart hammering the entire time. And my most prized possession, a tube of coral lipstick, barely used. One by one, I laid them on my bed like sacred relics. The rough denim and cotton of my daily uniform fell away, and with it, the suffocating weight of being Leo. The silk of the blouse was a cool whisper against my skin. The skirt settled perfectly at my hips, its fabric swishing softly as I turned. I faced the mirror. There she was. Not Leo, the boy who folded towels wrong and disappointed his stepmother with every breath. This was someone else. Someone soft. Someone with grace in the line of her collarbone and a story in her eyes. I called her Leah. My hands, usually clumsy, were steady as I uncapped the lipstick. I leaned in close to the glass, tracing the color onto my lips. My pulse thrummed in my ears, a frantic, joyful drumbeat. I felt beautiful. I felt correct. And that's when I heard it. The sound of a key in the front door. The sharp, unmistakable click of Eleanor's heels on the marble entryway. I forgot my wallet. Her voice rang out, sharp as broken glass. Ice flooded my veins. My feet were rooted to the floor. The floorboard was still open, the clothes I'd discarded still in a heap. It was too late. Her footsteps were already on the stairs, quick and purposeful. The bedroom door swung open. I turned slowly, the coral on my lips suddenly feeling garish and clownish. Eleanor stood in the doorway, purse in hand. Her eyes, cold, assessing, intelligent, took in the scene. They didn't widen in shock. They narrowed, cataloging every detail, my bare legs, the soft drape of the skirt, my trembling hands, the lipstick. A heavy, suffocating silence descended. She took a slow step into the room, shutting the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a verdict. "Well," she said, her voice like polished steel. "Now it all makes sense." I stammered, my throat tight. "I can explain. It's not what you think." She raised one perfectly manicured finger, silencing me. Her gaze was sharp enough to strip flesh from bone. "Stop," she said. "Don't insult my intelligence." Humiliation burned in my veins, hot and acidic. I stood frozen, a butterfly pinned to a board, while she examined her discovery. Eleanor didn't pace or raise her voice. That would have been too common, too emotional. Instead, she moved with a chilling, deliberate grace. She walked to the bed where my wig lay, its dark waves a stark contrast to the white duvet. She picked it up not with her whole hand, but between two fingers, as if it were a strange, dead thing she'd found in her garden. "I knew something was amiss," she mused, her voice low and conversational. She turned back to me, her eyes sweeping over my body, from the clumsy application of lipstick down to my bare, trembling knees. "You've been distracted. Anxious." I'd assumed it was drugs, or perhaps some sordid affair. She let the wig drop back onto the bed. A faint, cruel smile touched her lips. "But this is far more interesting." Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to cover myself, to say something, anything. But my throat was a desert. "Does Clara know?" The question was a scalpel, slid neatly between my ribs. I shook my head, a frantic, desperate motion. "No. Please don't tell her. Please." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of genuine interest in their icy depths. "She wouldn't take it well, would she? So, traditional. I imagine the daughter of a state senator has certain expectations for her boyfriend." She took a step closer. "I wonder what she would say if she saw you like this." Her Leo. The way she said my name was a violation. "Please," I begged, the word cracking. "I'll do anything. Just don't tell her." There it was. The opening she had been waiting for. The slow, chilling smile that spread across her face was one of pure, unadulterated power. "Anything?" I hesitated, and in that second, I knew I was lost. "You enjoy this, don't you?" she said, gesturing to my skirt. "Playing dress-up in your room." She stepped closer still, close enough for me to smell the crisp, expensive scent of her perfume. "Fine. If you wish to be a girl, Leo, then you will learn to be a proper one. No more hiding. No more sneaking. You will do it full-time. Under my supervision." I blinked, the words not quite connecting. "What?" For 1 week, she clarified, her tone all business now. "You will wear what I choose. You will act as I instruct. You will follow my rules without question. And if you refuse," she tapped the screen of her phone, which had materialized in her hand. "Clara gets a very interesting series of photos. I'm sure she'd be fascinated to know what her boyfriend keeps under his floorboards." Tears of helpless fury pricked my eyes. She had stripped me bare with nothing but words. "So," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "what will it be?" I could only nod, a slow, jerky movement of surrender. "Good." The smile vanished, replaced by the crisp efficiency of a drill sergeant. "Now, take off those clothes. All of them. Shower. And shave. Everything. I expect you back here in 20 minutes. I'll be waiting." She paused at the door. "And Leo? Don't be late." I stumbled into the bathroom, my body moving on autopilot. When I returned, damp and shivering, a towel clutched around my waist, she was sitting on the edge of my bed. Laid out beside her, like a set of surgical tools, was a new skin. It was a powder blue day dress with a prim white collar and puffed sleeves. Beside it lay a matching bra and silk panties, sheer white stockings, and a pair of low, unforgiving kitten heels. A full makeup kit was arranged on my nightstand. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. She patted the desk chair she had pulled in front of the mirror. "Sit," she commanded. "We're going to make you presentable." I obeyed, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Her hands were cool and steady as they worked. She applied foundation with brisk, impersonal strokes, muttering about my complexion. She swept blush across my cheeks, curled my lashes until they ached, and defined my brows with a sharp pencil. Finally, she took a tube of pale pink gloss and painted my lips, tilting my chin to inspect her work. "There," she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "Better." She handed me the dress. "Put it on." The fabric was soft and foreign against my newly bare skin. I fumbled with the zipper, and she stepped forward, zipping it up my back with a sharp, decisive tug. Then came the stockings, then the heels. My ankles wobbled. She turned me to face the mirror. I gasped. The person staring back was a stranger. An awkward, terrified, pretty girl with my eyes. My own face, but not my own. Eleanor circled me slowly, a sculptor inspecting her clay. "Posture," she snapped. "Chin up. Shoulders back. A lady does not slouch." I straightened instinctively. "You will wear this for the rest of the day. No exceptions." My phone, lying on the dresser, began to ring. The screen lit up with a photo of Clara, smiling in the sunlight. Before I could move, Eleanor snatched it up. Her eyes lit with a predatory gleam. "No," I choked out, taking a step forward. She held up a hand, a silent warning, and answered the call. "Hello, Clara, dear," she chirped. "Oh, Leo is just occupied at the moment, helping me with some things around the house." She paused, giving me a pointed, cruel look. "Yes, he's been going through some changes lately. Growing pains, you could say. You should stop by soon. I think you'll be quite surprised by the new him." She ended the call with a victorious smirk and tossed my phone back onto the dresser. It landed with a clatter that echoed the shattering of my world. "Why would you do that?" The words were ragged, torn from my throat. "Motivation," she said simply, her gaze cool and appraising. She looked me up and down, a critical frown marring her perfect makeup. "Your walk is atrocious. You move like a newborn foal. We're going to fix that." She gestured towards the open doorway with a flick of her wrist. "Go on. To the end of the hall and back. And try to imagine you possess a shred of elegance." My first steps in the kitten heels were a disaster. My ankles, accustomed to sneakers, buckled and rolled. My knees felt weak and untrustworthy. I tottered down the hallway, arms flailing for balance, the unfamiliar swish of the dress a constant, mocking reminder of my situation. "Slower," she barked from the doorway. "And for God's sake, soften your arms. You look like you're trying to land a plane." Back and forth. Back and forth. Each trip down the polished hardwood floor was a fresh wave of humiliation. My face was flushed, my feet already beginning to ache. But beneath the shame, something else was stirring. A strange, terrifying flicker of relief. The fear was still there, a cold stone in my stomach, but it was wrapped in a bizarre sense of rightness. Even as her prisoner, I was finally wearing the skin I had only ever dreamed of. It was a twisted, poisoned sort of freedom, but it was freedom nonetheless. That night, she didn't allow me to change. I slept in the powder blue dress, the fabric clinging to me in the humid night air. Every rustle of the sheets was a reminder of my captivity. The knock on my door the next morning was like a summons. "Up," Eleanor called, her voice crisp and businesslike. "We have a great deal to accomplish today." When I emerged, she was standing in the hall, arms crossed, looking like a Vogue editor about to dissect a flawed collection. She herself was immaculate in a charcoal pencil skirt and a severe, high-collared silk blouse. "Your new things are in the guest room," she announced, not bothering to look at me. "Breakfast in 15 minutes. If you're late, I call Clara and invite her for brunch." The guest room was no longer a guest room. It was an armory. Laid out on the bed was a peach-colored pleated skirt, a delicate white blouse with ruffles at the collar and cuffs, and a pair of matching heels that were a good inch higher than yesterday's. Fresh stockings were folded neatly next to a padded bra and panties. On the vanity, a long auburn wig sat on a foam head, its curls styled and sprayed into submission. My breath hitched. This wasn't just a whim. This was a calculated, premeditated campaign. My fingers trembled as I dressed. Each layer was another link in the chain she was forging around me. The stockings slid over my smooth legs. The padded bra created a subtle, unfamiliar curve beneath the thin fabric of the blouse. The skirt hugged my hips. The heels forced me onto the balls of my feet, tilting my posture forward, making me feel both taller and more vulnerable. When I entered the kitchen, she glanced up from her black coffee, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Your blouse is not tucked evenly," she said flatly. "And you still walk like a drunk flamingo. Fix it." I sat, my cheeks burning. She slid a plate with a single piece of dry toast and a small glass of grapefruit juice in front of me. We ate in silence. Or rather, she did. My throat was too tight to swallow. After breakfast, the lessons began in earnest. "A lady does not clump," she instructed, making me practice walking up and down the hallway for what felt like hours. Heel toe. Heel toe. Think of it as a dance. Then came posture. She made me sit in a hard-backed dining chair, a heavy textbook balanced on my head. Ankles crossed. Back straight. "Now read this aloud." She handed me a book of poetry. "You're kidding," I muttered. The look she gave me could have frozen fire. I started to read, my voice flat and shaky, the book tumbling to the floor every few seconds. "You fidget," she snapped. "Sit still." I tried again. "Your voice is monotone. Add some inflection. A little sweetness." It was relentless. It was degrading. And, to my horror, it was working. By the end of the afternoon, I could walk across the living room without wobbling. I could keep the book on my head for a full minute. I could even manage a semblance of a pleasant tone as I recited verses about daffodils and lonely clouds. That evening, she introduced a new exercise. "We're going to practice conversation," she announced, settling onto the sofa opposite me. "I will ask you a question, and you will respond as the person you are becoming." I stared at her. "What is your name?" she asked, her expression serious. I blinked. "Leo." "Wrong." She arched a perfect eyebrow. "Try again." My face flushed. My heart hammered. A name bubbled up from the secret part of me, the part that had lived in the dark for so long. "Jessica," I whispered. A slow smile spread across her face. "Good. And how old are you, Jessica?" 19. "And what do you enjoy doing, Jessica?" The answer came out before I could stop it, a quiet breath of truth. "Trying on pretty clothes." "Speak up," she commanded. I took a shaky breath and said it again, louder this time, the words tasting strange and terrifying and true on my tongue. "I like trying on pretty clothes." "That's better," she said, her smile widening. "Now say it like you mean it." That night, she laid out a pink satin nightgown for me. It felt like a costume for a play I had never agreed to be in. As I lay in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Clara. "Can I see you tomorrow? I miss you." A string of pleading emojis followed. My heart seized. I wanted to text back, to tell her everything was fine, to lie. But the words wouldn't come. What could I possibly say? A moment later, I heard Eleanor's voice from across the hall, muffled but clear. "Tomorrow," she called out, a lilting, cheerful quality to her tone, "is going to be very interesting." Morning came too quickly, dragged into existence by the insistent chirping of birds outside my window. My dreams had been a chaotic blur of high heels, Clara's worried face, and Eleanor's chilling smile. The satin of the nightgown was twisted around my legs, a silken restraint. Another text from Clara was waiting. "I really want to talk. I hope you're okay." I clutched the phone to my chest, a wave of guilt and longing washing over me. I wanted nothing more than to run to her, to let her kind voice soothe the panic inside me. But how could I explain this? How could Leo explain Jessica? Eleanor was already waiting for me. Today's uniform was a lemon yellow sheath dress, so form-fitting it felt painted on. The heels were stilettos, thin and brutally high. The bra was more aggressively padded than before. She was pushing, testing my limits, and I was too trapped to resist. "You're improving," she commented as I carefully navigated my way into the kitchen. Her eyes had a new, proprietary glint. Almost graceful. "You might pass for a proper young lady yet." Breakfast came with a warning. "Clara texted again," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "I told her you were going through something and that it might be best if she came to see for herself. She may be over later today." I dropped my fork. It clattered against the plate, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent room. What? You can't. You can't let her see me like this. Eleanor finally met my gaze, her expression one of cold amusement. You agreed to my terms, Leo. And if you attempt to break them now, she let the threat hang in the air. I will not only show her the pictures, I will invite her in while you are wearing your prettiest dress and have her watch you practice your walk. A wave of nausea washed over me. She'll hate me, I whispered. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before you decided to keep such a significant secret from the person you supposedly love. Her voice was devoid of sympathy. You're a monster. She smiled. And you're obedient. Now sit up straight. We have to prepare you for your debut. The preparation was more intense than anything that had come before. She brought out a new outfit, one she must have had hidden away for this very occasion. A short, flared black skirt with a ridiculously large white bow at the waist. A white, off-the-shoulder blouse that left my collarbones and shoulders completely bare. Sheer nude tights that offered the illusion of perfection. A long, brunette wig styled in soft, bouncy curls. It was too much. I can't wear this, I said, my voice shaking. It's too feminine. It's perfect, she countered, stepping forward. It suits the new you. She sat me in front of the mirror and, for the first time, handed me the tools. Do it yourself, she ordered. It's time you learned. My hands shook as I followed her instructions, her reflection a stern supervisor in the glass behind me. Foundation, blush, a smoky brown eyeliner, mascara. She guided me with sharp words, telling me to blend more here, to lift my chin there. Every stroke of the brush felt like another piece of Leo being erased, overwritten by this new, terrifying girl. When I finally stood up and looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The person staring back was pretty. Frighteningly, undeniably pretty. My breath caught in my throat. That is he or now, Eleanor whispered, her voice close to my ear. And for the rest of the day, you will be Jessica. Say it. Jessica, I repeated, the name a strange new shape in my mouth. Again. Louder. I'm Jessica. Good. She nodded, satisfied. Now, the shoes. The heels were open-toed, white patent leather, and at least 5 inches tall. I felt like I was walking on stilts. We spent the next hour rehearsing. Polite phrases. How to accept a compliment. How to deflect an unwanted question. How to smile as if I hadn't a care in the world. Then, the doorbell rang. I froze, every muscle tensing. Eleanor peeked through the blinds. It's not Clara, she said dismissively. Just the neighbor. She swung the door wide open. I scrambled for cover, hiding behind the kitchen island, my heart hammering against my ribs. Hi, Eleanor, came the cheerful voice of Mrs. Bell from next door. Just returning your casserole dish. Oh, thank you, Martha. How thoughtful, Eleanor replied smoothly. Jessica and I were just tidying up. Jessica. Mrs. Bell sounded curious. I don't believe I've had the pleasure. My blood ran cold. My niece, Eleanor lied without missing a beat. She's staying with me for a little while. A bit shy, I'm afraid. She laughed, a light, airy sound. You know how teenagers are. I pressed my hands to my chest, feeling the alien shape of the padded bra, the tickle of the wig against my cheek. What if she'd seen me? What if anyone saw me? The door closed. Eleanor turned to me, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. You hid like a frightened rabbit. Not very ladylike, Jessica. I almost had a heart attack, I hissed. She just smiled. You'll get used to it. The text came just after lunch, a death knell delivered via glowing pixels. Clara, hey babe, I miss you too much. I'm coming over. Be there in 20. My blood turned to ice. I read the message again and again, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something less catastrophic. But they remained, stark and immutable. Clara was coming. And I was standing in Eleanor's kitchen dressed as a pin-up doll. Eleanor. I cried, stumbling into the living room. She was on the couch, flipping through a fashion magazine, the picture of serene indifference. She's coming over. Right now. I have to change. She closed the magazine with a soft sigh and rose, her movements slow and deliberate. No, she said simply. No? Are you insane? I can't let her see me like this. She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Then don't let her in. She's my girlfriend, I whispered, horrified. Eleanor gave a cold, calculating smile. Precisely. Which means if she truly loves you, she'll understand. And if she doesn't, well, then you'll finally know where you stand, won't you? She glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner. You have about 10 minutes. I suggest you go to your room and practice your posture. You look tense. She turned her back on me, leaving me stranded in a sea of terror. I fled to my room and slammed the door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I paced in frantic circles, the stiletto heels sinking into the carpet. The wig was hot and itchy. The off-the-shoulder blouse felt obscene. I heard the sound of a car pulling up. A door slamming. Footsteps on the porch. Then, the cheerful chime of the doorbell. I held my breath, listening. Hi, Clara, darling. Eleanor's voice floated up the stairs, bright and welcoming. What a lovely surprise. Hi, Eleanor. Is Leo here? He's been so distant. Oh, yes, Eleanor said with that dangerous sweetness I had come to dread. He's upstairs in his room. Why don't you go on up? I think he's been wanting to show you something. My heart stopped. Footsteps on the stairs, slow and steady. Closer. Closer. Then, a soft knock on my bedroom door. Leo? Clara called, her voice muffled by the wood. It's me. Can I come in? I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. Eleanor's voice came next, from right outside the door. He's been a little shy lately. Go on in, sweetheart. The door's unlocked. A pause. Then, the soft click of the handle turning. I took one last, shuddering breath and forced myself to face the door as it swung open. Clara stood there, a bright, beautiful smile on her face. Hey, I was so worried. Her words died in her throat. Her smile froze, then melted away, replaced by wide-eyed, slack-jawed disbelief. She stared, her gaze traveling from the brunette curls of the wig, down the bare shoulders of the blouse, to the ridiculous bow on my skirt, and finally to the 5-inch heels. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on me, crushing the air from my lungs. Leo, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It was a question, an accusation, and a plea all at once. Hi, I managed to breathe. She took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. What is this? I didn't want you to find out like this, I said, my own voice trembling. It was supposed to be a secret. It's something I've struggled with for a long time. You dress like this? I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. Since before we met. I was too scared to tell you. Eleanor stood behind her, a silent, smug vulture overseeing the kill. Clara turned to her, her expression wounded and confused. You knew about this? I only just discovered it myself, Eleanor said, placing a comforting hand on Clara's shoulder. It was a masterful performance of concern. The poor dear was so terrified. I thought the best thing I could do was help him, explore these feelings in a safe environment. That's not what you did, I snapped, a spark of anger cutting through the fear. You threatened me. You blackmailed me into this. Clara's head whipped back towards me. Is that true? She asked, her voice breaking. I nodded slowly, tears finally welling in my eyes. She said she'd tell you everything, that she'd send you pictures. So I agreed. But the terrible thing is, once I started, part of me didn't want to stop. Because for the first time in my life, I felt right. The admission hung in the air between us, ugly and beautiful and true. Clara shook her head, backing away towards the stairs. I can't, she stammered. I need to go. I need to think. And just like that, she was gone. The sound of her running down the stairs and the slam of the front door were the most final sounds I had ever heard. I stood frozen in the hallway, a statue in a wig and heels. The scent of Eleanor's perfume wrapped around me like a shroud. She'll be back, Eleanor said calmly, crossing her arms. Or she won't. Either way, this was bound to happen. I turned on her, my eyes burning with a hatred so pure it felt holy. You wanted this. You wanted to destroy everything. She shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture. No, darling. I didn't destroy anything. I simply held up a mirror. You're the one who couldn't stand what you saw. I stormed past her, back into the prison of my room. I ripped the wig from my head, tore the blouse from my shoulders, and kicked the heels against the wall. I collapsed onto my bed, burying my face in my pillow as the sobs finally came, hot and ragged and full of shame. Shame at her and shame at myself for the part of me that had enjoyed the lesson. For the part of me that was already mourning the loss of Jessica. I lay there for a long time, the sounds of my own ragged sobs the only noise in the room. The clothes I had ripped from my body lay in a heap on the floor, a discarded skin. I had lost everything. Clara was gone. Leo was a joke. And Jessica. Jessica was a monster of Eleanor's creation, a weapon she had used to burn my world to the ground. My phone buzzed on the floor where it had fallen. I ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. A text. Then another. Eleanor, come downstairs. Eleanor, there is something you need to see. Eleanor, last warning. I was too empty to fight, too hollowed out to even feel anger anymore. I slid off the bed, my body aching. I picked up a soft, silk robe, one she had left hanging on my door days ago, and wrapped it around myself. Barefoot, I padded down the stairs, a ghost in my own home. She was waiting in the living room, her phone held in her hand like a weapon. That terrible, knowing smile was back. I thought you might want to know, she said, her voice smooth as cream, what really made Clara run. What are you talking about? My voice was hoarse. She held up the phone and tapped the screen. A video began to play. It was me, tottering down the hallway in the powder blue dress, my arms stiff with terror. Eleanor's voice, sharp and commanding, provided the narration. Another clip, me, sitting in front of the mirror, a shy, fleeting smile on my face as she applied blush to my cheeks. Another, me, blushing furiously as I stammered, my name is Jessica. My stomach plummeted. You filmed me? I whispered. Of course, she said sweetly. Insurance. Just in case you forgot the terms of our arrangement. She swiped to the final clip. This one was different. It was from the night before, filmed through a crack in the door. I was alone, wearing the flared skirt and off-the-shoulder blouse. Believing myself to be completely unobserved, I was practicing. A small, tentative curtsy. A shy turn. And then a full twirl, the skirt flaring out around me, a look of unadulterated, private joy on my face. A look of happiness. When did you show her this? I choked out, the air leaving my lungs. Just after she left your room, Eleanor said with a casual shrug. I caught her at the bottom of the stairs. I told her she deserved the full picture. That she should know exactly who she's been dating. The boy who lies and the girl who is desperate to come out and play. You're a monster. I'm a realist, she corrected, stepping closer. She was never going to accept this part of you, Leo. I did. I accepted it the moment I found you in my clothes. You just can't see the gift I'm giving you. What gift? I spat, staggering back from her. She leaned in, her eyes boring into mine. The chance to be who you really are. Without the pretense. Without the lies. Without the shame. Her smile was almost hypnotic. You may hate me now, Jessica. But one day, you will thank me. I turned and fled. I ran back up the stairs, back into my room, and slammed the door. But this time, I didn't cry. There were no tears left. The worst had happened. My secret was not only out, it had been curated, edited, and used to detonate my life. There was nothing left to hide. There was nothing left to fear. I stood in front of the full-length mirror. The silk robe hung loosely around me, the collar slipping off one shoulder. My hair was a wreck, my face smeared with the remnants of makeup. But beneath the mess, I could still see her. Jessica. That name. The name Eleanor had branded me with, had used as a tool of humiliation and control. It echoed in my head, not as an insult, but as a statement of fact. Slowly, deliberately, I walked over to the discarded wig. I picked it up from the floor, my hands smoothing the tangled brunette strands. I slid it back onto my head, aligning it not with frantic haste, but with a newfound sense of purpose. I walked to the vanity, wiped the smeared makeup from my face, and carefully, with a steady hand, reapplied a touch of blush and a soft coat of lip gloss. Then I looked up. There she was. Not Leo, the frightened boy in a costume. Not Eleanor's puppet. Jessica. And though she looked tired and sad and utterly alone, for the first time, she also looked real. I sat before the mirror for what felt like hours, not moving, just breathing in the charged silence of the room. My reflection stared back, a stranger I was only just beginning to know. The wig was straight. The makeup was clean. The girl was still there. Eleanor thought she had won. She thought that by forcing me into this life, by shattering my old one, she would break me. She would have a doll to dress, a project to perfect, a permanent resident in the prison she had built. But she had miscalculated. She had used shame as her weapon, but I was out of shame. She had used fear, but the worst had already happened. She hadn't created a prisoner. She had created a survivor. A soft knock came at the door. I didn't answer. Jessica, Eleanor's voice followed, softer than usual. We need to talk. I remained silent, my gaze locked on my own reflection. After a moment, the door creaked open. She stepped inside, her heels sinking into the carpet, her presence filling the room. I see you've made a choice, she said, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't triumph. It was observation. I finally turned from the mirror to face her. This was never your choice to make. You didn't seem so sure of that when I found you trembling in your little skirt. I was scared, I said quietly, the words clear and steady. I was scared because I thought if anyone saw this part of me, they would hate me. And you know what? You saw it. And you proved me right. You hated it so much you decided to turn it into a punishment. Eleanor didn't flinch. She simply watched me, her head tilted slightly. You think you won, I continued, a strange calm settling over me as I stood up. The silk robe swished around my ankles. But you didn't. You just kicked open a door I was too afraid to touch. You made Jessica real, Eleanor. And now you have to deal with her. She studied me for a long moment, her arms folded across her chest. Prove it. What? If this is truly who you are, then stop hiding in this room. Stop crying. Go outside. Walk down the street. Own it. A challenge glittered in her eyes. You're the one claiming to be free of shame, Jessica. Let's see if you believe your own words. My heart stuttered. Go outside? Like this? In a wig and makeup, in nothing but a silk robe? The thought was terrifying. But it didn't paralyze me. Not anymore. The fear was a familiar hum in the background, not the screaming siren it had once been. Something inside me had shifted permanently. The foundation had cracked. I glanced back at the mirror. Jessica stared back, her expression resolute. I turned back to Eleanor and gave a single, sharp nod. Fine. A flicker of surprise crossed her face before she masked it. Then get dressed. Properly. I'll meet you downstairs in 10 minutes. I didn't choose one of the outfits she had selected. I went to the loose floorboard, to my own small collection of treasures. I pulled out the wisteria silk blouse and the sky blue A-line skirt. My clothes. Leah's clothes. I slipped on the dusty rose ballet flats, no heels today. I was walking for myself, not for her. When I came downstairs, she was waiting by the front door, holding a small handbag. Keys, lip gloss, a credit card, she said, her tone all business. The essentials. Where are we going? I asked, my voice betraying a slight tremor as I took the purse. For a walk, she said. Around the block. You'll survive. The front door loomed before me like the gate to a new world. I took a deep, steadying breath, my hand hovering over the brass knob. Then I opened it and stepped out into the blinding afternoon sun. The air was warm, and a light breeze lifted the hem of my skirt, making me shiver. Every sound was magnified, the chatter of birds, the distant hum of a lawnmower, the soft scuff of my own flats on the pavement. Every movement felt self-conscious and exaggerated. Eleanor walked beside me in silence, a silent, impeccably dressed guard. A man watering his lawn looked up as we passed. He smiled, a polite, neighborly gesture. Afternoon, Eleanor. Afternoon, Bill, she replied smoothly. I tried to echo her, but only a strangled croak came out. He didn't seem to notice. A woman jogged past us, her gaze flicking over me for a brief, curious moment. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was just acknowledgement. I made it halfway down the street before my legs started to feel like jelly. We stopped under the shade of a large oak tree. "You can turn back if you want to," Eleanor said, her voice neutral. I stood there, shaking, the world tilting slightly on its axis. All I had to do was turn around, run back to the house, and lock the door. I could go back to being a prisoner. It would be easier. Safer. I looked at her, at the woman who had tried to break me. And I slowly, deliberately, shook my head. "No," I said, my voice finding its strength. "I'm not running anymore." She raised an eyebrow. "So, Jessica is here to stay?" I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned my face forward and kept walking. Later that evening, I sat alone in my room, not the guest room, my room. The vanity light glowed softly as I carefully removed my makeup and took off the wig. I looked tired, but for the first time in my life, I felt whole. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. "Clara, I've been thinking. A lot. Can we talk? For real this time?" I stared at the message, my heart doing a slow, painful flip in my chest. Was this hope? Or was it just the final twist of the knife? I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't hide anymore. I typed back a single word. "Me, yes." As I set the phone down and turned off the light, my reflection ghosted in the dark glass of the window. A silhouette with long hair and soft shoulders. She wasn't going away. And I didn't want her to. The next afternoon, I stood before the park bench like a defendant awaiting a verdict. I had chosen my armor carefully. The sky blue skirt, the wisteria blouse, the rose-colored flats. My own clothes. Jessica's clothes, born not from Eleanor's punishment, but from my own secret joy. Clara was already there, looking small and pale against the vibrant green of the park. When she saw me approaching, she stood up slowly, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes, wide and uncertain, took in the whole picture. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Hi," she replied, her voice soft. The silence between us was thick with unspoken words, with a week of lies and a lifetime of secrets. "You came," she stated, a simple observation. "You asked me to," I said. "I'm done hiding, Clara. From you. From everyone." She took a slow breath, her gaze dropping to the ground before lifting to meet mine again. "The things Eleanor showed me, the videos. She filmed me to control me," I said quickly. "But the things you saw, the smile, that was real. That's the part one was so afraid of. The part of me that felt happy." "I was so angry," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "And hurt. I felt like our whole relationship was a lie." "It wasn't," I insisted, taking a tentative step closer. "My feelings for you were the most real thing in my life. I love you, Clara. That person is still me. Leo is still me. But Jessica is too." She looked at me then, truly looked at me, past the wig and the makeup. She looked into my eyes. "When you ran out of my house, I thought my life was over. But then, I thought about how scared you must have been. For years. Scared to tell me. Scared to tell anyone." She shook her head, a tear finally tracing a path down her cheek. "I don't understand it. Not yet. But I love Leo. And if Jessica is a part of him, then I want to try to understand her too." A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. She stepped forward and took my hand. Her fingers were warm and familiar, an anchor in the swirling chaos of my life. "I don't know what this means for us," she admitted honestly. "But I know I'm not ready to let you go." We stood there for a long time, hand in hand, two people trying to build a new bridge over the ruins of the old one. I returned home that evening feeling lighter than I had in my entire life. The war, I thought, was over. I had faced my tormentor, my girlfriend, and myself, and I was still standing. Eleanor was waiting for me in the foyer, her arms crossed. An expectant look was on her face. "Well?" she demanded. "She's trying," I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in days. "She wants to understand." I expected a snide remark, a cutting dismissal. Instead, Eleanor's perfectly made-up face contorted into a brief, ugly frown. "A shame," she muttered. "I was hoping we'd finally be rid of her." I stopped, my hand on the newel post. Why? Why are you like this? Why do you want me to be miserable? She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than cold calculation in her eyes. It was a flicker of something raw, something almost like jealousy. Because you listen better when you're cornered, she snapped. I'm not cornered anymore, I said, turning to head up the stairs. Don't be so sure, she called after me. I still have everything. I paused on the third step and looked back down at her. I don't care, I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the truth. Post the videos. Tell the world. I'm done. I expected her to threaten me again. Instead, a strange, triumphant laugh echoed in the hall. You think this is over, she said, her voice dropping to that familiar, chilling purr. Darling, this was just the start. Her smile returned, but it was different this time. It was sharp, victorious, and utterly devoid of warmth. This was the smile of a queen who had just signed an execution order. I made a few calls today, Jessica, she said, savoring the name. Sent a few documents to some very official people. Let's just say, they were very interested in your case. The cold dread I thought I had banished came rushing back. What did you do? She glided towards the bottom of the stairs, looking up at me. Your father left a very specific trust, you see, with certain moral clauses. Stipulations about family honor, reputation. Things a cross-dressing son might complicate. She paused, letting the words sink in. And then there's the matter of your legal identity. It's amazing what a notarized letter from a legal guardian and a doctor's assessment of gender dysphoria can set in motion. My blood ran cold. You didn't. Oh, I did, she whispered, her eyes glittering with a terrifying, manic light. The mail comes tomorrow. You'll see. You wanted to be Jessica? Congratulations, darling. I'm making it permanent. You are trapped. Not by me, but by paperwork. By the law. You're all mine now. She turned and walked into the kitchen, humming. I stood on the stairs, my hand gripping the banister, my victory from the park turning to ash in my mouth. This was never about teaching me a lesson. It wasn't about shame or acceptance. It was about possession. She hadn't just opened the door to my cage. She had thrown away the key and was now changing the name on the bars. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. And Jessica, the girl I had just started to love, was now the name of my prison. Sleep was not a refuge, it was a continuation of the nightmare. I dreamt of endless hallways lined with filing cabinets, each drawer bearing the name Jessica in stark, black letters. I dreamt of my father's face, disappointed, turning to smoke. I woke to the cold, gray light of dawn, the feeling of entrapment already a physical weight on my chest. The morning was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Eleanor was already in the kitchen, dressed in a sharp, cream-colored pantsuit, looking as if she were about to close a multi-million-dollar deal. She hummed that same cheerful, tuneless melody as she arranged a single red rose in a crystal vase. She didn't speak to me. She didn't need to. Her every calm, deliberate action screamed her victory. The silence in the house was a countdown. I sat at the kitchen island, dressed in the wisteria blouse and blue skirt from the day before. They no longer felt like my armor. They felt like a uniform. I couldn't eat. Every sound from outside, a passing car, a dog barking, made my heart leap into my throat. Then, at precisely 10:17 a.m., I heard it. The faint squeak of the mail slot in the front door, followed by the soft thud of letters hitting the marble floor. Eleanor stopped humming. She turned and gave me a serene smile. Would you be a dear and fetch that, Jessica? My legs felt like lead as I walked to the foyer. There were 3 envelopes on the floor, a utility bill, a glossy catalog, and one that made my blood run cold. It was thick and heavy, made of expensive cream-colored cardstock. The return address was a prestigious law firm downtown, one whose name I recognized from billboards and the society pages Eleanor read. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was addressed to me. To Leo. I carried it back to the kitchen and placed it on the island between us. Well, go on, she urged, sipping her coffee. Don't keep us in suspense. With numb fingers, I tore it open. The paper inside was just as heavy, covered in dense, legalistic text. I scanned the words, my mind struggling to process them. Fiduciary duty, morality clause, behavior unbecoming a beneficiary, immediate suspension of trust distributions. But it was the second page that stole the air from my lungs. It was a copy of a petition filed with the county court. A petition for conservatorship. Filed by Eleanor Vance, citing my severe emotional distress, gender confusion, and vulnerability to undue influence. It requested full legal and financial control over my person and my estate. Over me. What is this? I whispered, sliding the paper across the island towards her. It's protection, darling, she said, not even glancing at it. I'm protecting the family name. I'm protecting your father's legacy. And most importantly, I'm protecting you from yourself. You're clearly not well. You're confused. You need guidance. You're trying to have me declared incompetent, I said, the horror of it dawning. You're trying to own me. I'm trying to help you, she corrected smoothly. A judge will see it, too. A boy who suddenly decides he's a girl, who is estranged from his loving girlfriend, who has been sneaking around and lying for years. She let out a small, sympathetic sigh. And of course, there's the evidence of your instability. She tapped her phone, which was lying beside her. My video diaries of your journey. The room began to spin. This wasn't a punishment anymore. This was an erasure. She was going to use the very identity I was starting to embrace as proof that I was mentally unfit. She would lock me in the gilded cage of her care, and Jessica would be the name on the door. Cooperate, she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Be the daughter I'm trying to shape. Live as Jessica, full-time. Follow my rules. Let me guide you. If you do that, I can be a very benevolent conservator. We can go shopping. We can redecorate your room. It could be lovely. She leaned forward. But if you fight me, I will use every tool at my disposal to prove to a court that Leo is a sick, unstable boy who needs to be saved. And I will win. Rage, pure and hot, finally burned through the fog of fear. I snatched the papers from the counter. I wasn't her doll. I wasn't her project. I turned and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away. I flew up the stairs, slammed my bedroom door, and locked it. My breath came in shuddering sobs. I was trapped. The house was a prison, the legal system her weapon, and my own identity the charge against me. Then I remembered Clara. Her warm hand in mine. Her promise to try. My hands shaking so badly I could barely operate the screen. I found her number and hit call. She answered on the second ring. Leo? Jessica? Are you okay? No, I choked out, pressing my back against the door as if Eleanor might break it down. Clara, she did something. Something terrible. There are lawyers. She's trying to take control. Of everything. A conservatorship. She says I'm unstable. There was a moment of shocked silence on the other end of the line. I held my breath, expecting her to say it was too much, that she couldn't handle it. Instead, her voice came back, sharp and clear and completely changed. The gentle, uncertain girl was gone, replaced by someone I had never heard before. Listen to me, Clara commanded, her tone urgent and strong. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. Do not leave the house. My father is a state senator, Leo. He knows people. He knows lawyers who eat people like her for breakfast. Stay right where you are. I'm on my way. The 45 minutes I spent locked in my room felt longer than the entire preceding week. I paced the floor, the legal documents clutched in my hand, their dense, threatening words blurring before my eyes. Every creak of the floorboards from downstairs, every distant sound from the street, sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through me. I was a fugitive in my own home. Eleanor made no move to get me. She didn't pound on the door or shout threats. Her silence was far more terrifying. It was the calm, confident silence of a predator who knows its prey is cornered and has nowhere left to run. She was letting me steep in my own terror, letting me come to the rational conclusion that surrender was the only option. But Clara's voice echoed in my head, a lifeline of pure, unexpected steel. Stay right where you are. I'm on my way. The doorbell rang. This time, the sound was not a death knell. It was a cavalry charge. I heard Eleanor's measured footsteps crossing the foyer. The front door opened. Clara, dear, Eleanor's voice was syrupy sweet, the sound of a spider welcoming a fly. I'm afraid Jessica is not feeling well. A bit of an episode. I think it's best if... I'm not here to see Jessica. Clara's voice cut through Eleanor's, sharp and cold as ice. I'm here with my father. A new voice, a deep, authoritative baritone I recognized from political ads, filled the hall. Eleanor, I believe we have some things to discuss regarding your petition against my daughter's partner. There was a moment of stunned silence from downstairs. I crept to my door, pressing my ear against the wood. Senator, Eleanor said, her voice recovering quickly, though it had lost its syrupy quality and gained a brittle edge. This is a private family matter. It stopped being a private matter the moment you filed a legal document attempting to strip a young man of his rights, the senator replied, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable weight of power. A young man who, I might add, has the full support of my family. Now, would you prefer to have this conversation here, or shall my lawyer, who is waiting in the car, join us? I could almost hear the gears turning in Eleanor's head, the furious calculation. I unlocked my door and slowly, silently, crept to the top of the stairs. Eleanor stood in the foyer, her perfect posture rigid, a faint flush of color on her high cheekbones. Opposite her stood Clara, her jaw set, her eyes blazing with a protective fire I had never seen. And beside her stood her father, a tall, imposing man in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression one of polite but absolute disapproval. There's been a misunderstanding, Eleanor began, trying to regain control. Leo is unwell. I am merely trying to. You are trying to perpetrate a fraud, the senator interrupted calmly. You are using a young person's exploration of their identity as leverage to seize control of their inheritance. It's a distasteful and, I assure you, legally tenuous strategy, especially when faced with a robust defense. I started down the stairs. All three of them turned to look at me. Clara's face softened with relief. Her father gave me a measured, assessing look, not of judgment, but of evaluation. Eleanor's eyes narrowed into slits of pure venom. And here she is now, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Perhaps you can ask Jessica herself if she feels stable enough to manage her own affairs. I reached the bottom of the stairs, my flats silent on the marble. I was still wearing the skirt and blouse. The wig was still perfectly in place. But I no longer felt like a girl in a costume. I felt like a soldier. I looked directly at Senator Thompson. My name is Leo, I said, my voice clear and strong. And sometimes I am also Jessica. That doesn't make me confused or incompetent. It makes me, me. And my stepmother is not trying to help me. She is trying to bury me. The senator held my gaze for a long moment, then gave a slight, decisive nod. I believe you, he said simply. He then turned his full attention back to Eleanor. So, here are your options. You can withdraw this frivolous and frankly insulting petition immediately, in which case, my family will consider the matter closed. Or, you can proceed. If you proceed, I will not only fund Leo's defense with the best legal team in the state, I will also make it my personal mission to ensure that every reporter, every columnist, and every one of your society friends knows exactly what you have tried to do here. Your reputation, which I know you value so highly, will be incinerated. The choice is yours. Eleanor stared at him, her face a mask of fury. The perfect, powdered facade was cracking, revealing the ugly, grasping greed beneath. She had been outmaneuvered, her power checkmated by a greater power. She had built her life on a foundation of appearances and influence, and he was threatening to tear it all down with a single phone call. She looked from the senator's implacable face to Clara's defiant one, and finally to me. The hatred in her eyes was so potent it was almost a physical force. She turned on her heel, walked to the ornate side table in the hall, snatched up a pen, and pulled the petition from my hand. With a vicious, angry stroke, she scrawled her name on a line I hadn't even noticed, the one for withdrawal. She shoved the papers into the senator's hand. "Get out of my house," she hissed, her voice low and shaking with rage. "Gladly," the senator said. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Leo, why don't you and Clara pack a bag? You'll be staying with us for a while." As Clara and I turned to go up the stairs, Eleanor spoke one last time, her voice a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You may have won the battle," she spat, "but you will never be free of me. Every time you look in the mirror, you will see the girl that I created." I stopped and looked back at her, at this small, hateful woman standing alone in her perfect, empty house. And I smiled. "No, Eleanor," I said softly. "You didn't create her. You just introduced us." The guest room at the Thompsons' house was larger than my entire apartment would one day be. It was decorated in serene shades of blue and cream, with a four-poster bed and a view of a sprawling, manicured garden. It was a beautiful, peaceful cage, but it was a cage nonetheless. For the first few days, I barely left it. The legal battle was swift and brutal, fought by proxy. Senator Thompson's lawyers descended on Eleanor's life with the quiet efficiency of a pack of wolves. They unearthed questionable expenses from my father's estate, spoke to disgruntled former staff, and compiled a dossier that painted a very different picture of the grieving widow. Faced with total social and financial ruin, Eleanor capitulated completely. A new legal arrangement was drawn up. I was granted early access to my trust, which would be managed by an independent third party until I turned 25. A restraining order was put in place, forbidding Eleanor from contacting me or Clara in any way. She remained in the house, a dragon guarding a hoard of memories, but her power over me was broken. I was, for the first time, truly free. And I had no idea what to do with that freedom. I had spent my entire life defined by secrets and lies, and the last few weeks defined by Eleanor's tyrannical control. Without the fight, without the fear, I felt adrift. Who was I, when no one was forcing me to be anything? I didn't wear the skirts or the blouses. I didn't touch the makeup Clara had thoughtfully bought and left on the vanity for me. I wore the gray sweatpants and shapeless t-shirts provided by the senator's son, and I felt like a ghost. Leo felt wrong. But Jessica felt like a performance I no longer had the energy for. Clara was my anchor. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She would just come and sit with me, sometimes talking about her day, sometimes just holding my hand while we watched the sunset from the window. Her love was a quiet, steady presence, a lighthouse in my internal storm. "You know," she said one evening, about a week into my stay, "I've been thinking. Jessica doesn't have to be Eleanor's creation. And she doesn't have to be a secret either. She can just be you, when you want her to be." Her words were simple, but they struck a chord deep inside me. That night, after she had gone, I stood in front of the large, ornate mirror in the bathroom. For the first time in days, I truly looked at myself. I saw Leo's tired eyes, his pale skin, his unkempt hair. He looked lost. Slowly, as if in a trance, I opened the makeup bag. My hands were hesitant at first, then more confident. A little foundation to even out my skin. A soft sweep of blush. A touch of mascara. I didn't put on a wig. I just brushed my own short hair, letting it fall as it would. Then I opened my suitcase and pulled out the wisteria blouse. I slipped it on, the familiar silk a comforting whisper against my skin. I looked in the mirror again. It wasn't Leo. And it wasn't the terrified, polished Jessica from Eleanor's boot camp. It was someone new. Someone in between. A boy with gentle eyes and soft lips. A person who felt right, not because of a costume or a role, but because for the first time, both halves were looking out of the same set of eyes. There was no hiding. There was no performance. There was just me. When Clara knocked on my door the next morning, I opened it. She looked at me, at the blouse, at the hint of makeup. Her eyes didn't show shock or confusion. They just showed love. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," I replied, and for the first time in a long time, the smile that reached my lips felt completely my own. The war was over. The battles to come would be smaller, more personal, navigating the world, finding my place, learning to integrate all the pieces of myself. But I wouldn't be fighting them alone. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would never be afraid of my own reflection again.